That's a new thing. Hello.
Hello and welcome to another Frackin' podcast. I'm Van and I'm here with my co-hosts.
Marty.
Joseph.
If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If you are tuning in again, thank you so much. We are so glad that you are back. Today's episode is episode 8, Bad Guy, and we'll be discussing villains. I'm so excited about this episode.
I am too, but I don't know that I would necessarily say all of them are villains.
Which is why I'm very excited about this conversation, because I'm looking forward to the nuance of who actually is a real villain and who maybe falls in that gray area.
Yeah, a lot of these. I'm like, are they really the villain? Maybe not. Maybe not.
But regardless, I love villains because, that just the villain always adds the most interesting character to every story. I just you can't have the story without a villain. You need
right. Like it would just be boring.
It would be boring without villains. We have broken up our villains into some categories, and we're going to more broadly talk about these amazing categories and the villains that fall under them. First up, we have Femme Fatale, which I love, and we could have just filled this entire category with Bond women, but that would have been very boring. Also, a lot of Femme Fatales are not villains at all.
Correct.
Like a lot of them would not fit in this category, but some of them do. I think our first one we have is Catwoman. I think she fits and doesn't fit depending on the adaptation, depending on the comic run, depending on the movie. Sometimes she is a villain. Sometimes she's not, in my opinion.
I would say from what I know. So while I am a fan of comics, I am not deep in comic lore. So, but what I know of her, even in the comics, is that she is more of an anti-hero. In recent years, in past years, definitely not somebody who was considered an anti-hero at all. But I think ever since Tim Burton's take on her, in the first Batman movie that came out in the, oh my God, was it the 80s?
It was.
I just don't want to think about that. Anyway, ever since that Batman movie, it's been a little bit more of a nuanced character, I would say.
Yeah, I think that all of the comic book character, quote unquote, villains fall into that gray area eventually, because there comes a point in time in storytelling where they can't just be doing the mustache twirling bad guy roles that they've been doing their whole time. You have to kind of build the character. And even the bad guy doesn't see themselves as the bad guy. So, and I think you can be an antagonist in a film like Catwoman, but not actually be a real villain. I think you wouldn't put Catwoman on the same level as Joker, for example. So, I always struggled with Catwoman as seeing her as a villain, because I feel like the things she does for a reason, and her reason actually makes sense. It doesn't necessarily, all villains have a reason, and sometimes their reason is like a psychotic reason, and you're like, yeah, you're obviously a bad guy. But I feel like Catwoman always has a reason that falls in a gray area where you think to yourself, yeah, it kind of makes sense that she does that.
Yeah. She is very villainy, but also I think collectively decided that she's no longer a villain and she hasn't been written as one in a while, which I love. I love that for her. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, are you really bad? No
I mean, I
thanks.
think it's perspective too. I mean, I guess if you are Bruce Wayne, you maybe have good reason to see her as villain for a lot of her runs, particularly in the films. But I don't know. I struggle to say that she's actually a real villain.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
mean, if you think back to like how she was portrayed in the Batman TV show, with um the campy
A-
one in the
The Adam
60s,
West,
Adam West, yeah.
Burt Ward.
She was kind of more of a henchman to other villains than she was an actual villain herself, which I never really liked that take on Catwoman. Um, but also played by amazing actresses and just I think a waste of a character in some sort of way. But there's always kind of that chemistry with Batman as well, which is I think what keeps her from being a full villain also, because she does go down these dark paths for um getting revenge or trying to make things right for herself, and she could go the way of all of the other rogues, right, which is super villain, but I don't think she actually does because Batman kind of keeps her sort of like grounded, I think. That relationship does. And to Sci-Fi Queen's comment, which I think is amazing, but Bruce Wayne can be seen as a villain. He
Yeah,
breaks the law of his vigilante behavior.
I,
Also,
I
true.
mean, yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think, in my opinion, that Batman is the good guy. That's
no,
my
Yeah.
opinion about him.
I
he's
think that's the thing about Gotham in general. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody that lives in Gotham is good or bad. I think everybody kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, some people are maybe bad, but I think for the majority of them fall in that gray area where nobody is really a good character.
I think all the
right.
good characters move to
Yeah, Metropolis.
Metropolis
Metropolis. Yeah,
or
yeah.
anywhere else.
But
No,
yeah,
but
like
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like to Tug of Trekker's comment, Gregory's comment. He's a hedge fund billionaire who gets off on beating up poor people. Like, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, that's why I kind of feel like Catwoman to me always struck me as somebody who was just kind of trying to make her way and just struggled figuring out how to do that in a way that would allow her to live the lifestyle she wanted, but also, still play by the rules of morality in society, which she lives in a society that doesn't really seem to have much morals anyway. And so to me, she always came off more of like, just trying to break the rules that society has made that's keeping her down. And I actually liked the activism route that the Halle Berry film took. I know a lot of people didn't like the Halle Berry film, but I kind of like that. Like, I'm just pro cats. Uh,
Oh,
you
I
know,
I I approve. I approve. We're just like protect all the cats. I get it.
yeah,
yeah,
Um, so she is a fun example of a femme fatale. Whether she is
yeah,
all
definitely.
villain or not, she still fits very well into that category. The next one on our list is probably one of my favorite.
oh
Um,
yeah,
Oh yes,
Saffron,
from
Yolanda,
Firefly.
um, Bridget, I think was another name.
yeah. I
Um,
think
I think it was
so many
Bridget.
names. I mean,
A
it's
fantastic character, a super fun character. She comes on to the ship having gotten Mal drunk and tricking him into marrying her. And she's got this whole innocent routine going on, and she's very, very good at it. I mean,
Hmm.
she works really, really hard at it. It's very, very convincing. Um,
Yeah, I'll admit
yeah,
that when I first saw Firefly, that she actually had me fooled in the beginning. I was like, there's something off about this. Like, this feels a little too much, but the whole show feels a little too much. It's already a little campy. So I was like, well, maybe that's just what we're leaning into. So like her like role reversal really surprised me, and I liked that.
See,
Amazing acting.
I had a different perspective. Like when I saw her the first time and she was playing this, I was like, this is a red flag. And it was a red flag for me because one, beautiful redhead, super innocent, like acting like when she said something about not being pleasant to look at, I was like, oh, she knows she's pleasant to look at. You don't look like that. Like this is an act. I was like, red flags, this danger. But that's me. But also like even though those red flags are going off in my head, if I had been standing in front of her, totally would have fallen for it. Just
I
saying.
think that goes for all of us here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we all would have fallen for it. So I came in it from the perspective that I watched the movie first, and I
Okay.
knew in the movie that Mal did not have a wife, and the show was before the movie. So I'm like, this ends in tragedy. I don't know what kind of tragedy, but this ends in tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, a lot of people actually first were exposed to that universe through Serenity and not through the series because
Yeah.
Fox did a really good job of screwing up the scheduling and hiding it from people who would want to see it. So,
Yeah.
It did not get good scheduling. But yeah,
or
she's amazing. She's perfect. She does such a good job being a femme fatale throughout that entire episode.
You know, she's
Um,
relentless too. You know, she doesn't like change her like she's like, this is my philosophy, this is who I am, I know who I am, and she sticks to it. Uh
she is a fully developed character when she comes onto the show.
she is.
I think
Eh,
she was on 2 episodes, right?
she was
'Cause
on
there's,
only 2 episodes, yes.
yeah, but there's only 13, so it's like
So
a
Wow,
it's
significant
that's
portion of the
significant.
that's a lot, and I feel like if they had continued the show, she would have come back in the same kind of antagonist way. Um, in the so there are novels and comics that continue the show, and she's not in the novels. She is in at least 2 comics, 2 runs of comics. And one goes into like she's telling some cop the backstory of her life and how she got there. Um, which is a fun, interesting read. I highly recommend it if you want to delve into her character. But at the end of the comic, she says, or maybe that's not the real story at all. So you
Oh,
don't
very
know.
Derek.
Was this her real backstory? Was it not? Was it partially? And then she has another one where she does a heist, but she like takes only the women. And so it's just like an all-girl heist, and that is by far my favorite comic of all time. But again, she is doing her femme fatale, and it's amazing. It's so good.
what I think. So the second episode she was in, I have not seen the comics, so I can't speak to them, but I'm going to be looking for it now because I didn't realize she was in the comic.
Oh,
The second episode, they end up at a planet. They're trying to steal this like
a little
rare
gun.
gun thing, right?
Yeah.
But it turns out that she was indeed like she tried for at least a bit to be a housewife with this extremely wealthy dude who has his own floating private island. Um, so you kind of get glimpses that she is a more complex person than just this femme fatale who constantly lies. Like you can see there's like this tragedy in her past that we don't really get much detail into. So I think that's what makes her such a compelling character for me. Is like her introduction was just amazing, but that episode was really it was pretty fascinating for me.
I I love every single moment that she is on screen. Um, she steals the show. She does it so well. I adore how she uses her sex appeal to just take over Serenity. I think my favorite is when she's trying to seduce Wash, and he
Yeah.
is like so incredibly tempted by this. And she gets so annoyed because it does not work on him. Like, she tried so hard and it doesn't work. And you can just see her face like, this man. And then she just knocks him out. Like, you know what? I'm gonna try really hard to do this the nice way, the gentle way, but I'm not opposed to violence.
Right. Right.
But I do also like how she does not actually, aside from really knocking out Wash, get her hands dirty. She's not the one doing the killing. She's the one like leading them into a trap. She's the one tricking people. Just very deceptive, very
and it's
manipulative.
and it's funny how she gets trapped in the second episode in a similar way, right? Like they let her play up her femme fatale, and they had this mock fight, right? And it's just poetic justice at the end of the episode where she's left inside the trash dumpster Cybertruck thing at the end of the episode. Yes, did I do that?
Yes.
Yes, I did that. Oh, sorry.
That entire episode had me on the edge of my seat the first time I watched it because I was like, oh my God, she's gonna get away with it. She's gonna get away with it. So I was actually a little shocked when they had thought it through, which must have been somebody besides Mal's plan. Like,
I was
that
gonna
was
say it's
not
definitely
his
not
plan.
Mal.
Like, he started with the
No.
plan and brought her on board, but like it was fleshed out by somebody else. Love him dearly. I do. I love him, but no.
Yeah, but it was definitely Inara's plan, right? Like it had to be her plan.
I mean, I feel like Inara was the best foil for her because Inara does something similar but in a different way, like for a different purpose, you know. So she after a bit, she kind of understood what was going on.
Yeah, and she even said that Saffron definitely is trained.
Yeah,
as a companion. It's like,
I mean, she is like, oh, you're good.
Yeah,
you're good. Like,
actually,
she recognizes talent.
Like the scenes between them two are really interesting. Just like the chemistry between them on screen, essentially playing a very similar character, but with different motivations was, but at the same level, was really good.
Yeah.
I loved them together.
I tell you what, it definitely both those characters are just
fantastic,
amazing, and definitely a weak spot. So,
time for a Firefly rewatch.
It is always time for a Firefly rewatch. I do recommend the novels. The comics get a little fun, but
yeah, I mean, Joss Whedon comics are always kind of like jumping the shark a little sometimes.
Moving on, we go from one of my favorite Bi Panic shows to one of my favorite Bi Panic movies, Anck-Su-Namun from The Mummy. I adore.
So is she a villain though? Do we think she's a villain? You're the expert, so I'm gonna let you answer this.
I think she is absolutely a villain, and if you've only seen the first movie, I can see where you might make the argument that she is more uninvolved. She's not really a villain. What does she do in the first movie? In the first movie, she kisses a guy that she likes, and then she stabs and kills her husband, who is basically keeping her inside of a cage, which, you know, I can't ever be mad about somebody leaving an abusive person. So, you know.
Right. And in the first movie,
maybe not the best, but
It's what she does in the second movie that
So yeah,
turns
in the
her into a
second
villain.
movie, it's very obvious that she was part of the bigger plan the entire time. She was aware of a bigger plan the entire time. She was involved and pivotal to said plan. And also she leaves her man to die. Like, I'm gonna just save myself, which is definitely villain behavior there at the end. But
and that's what makes her a villain to me, right? Is she had this love affair. The mummy definitely Imhotep loves her so deeply he violates everything about his code of conduct and puts his soul at risk to try to resurrect her, right? And not just that first time, but then again when he comes back, knowing that he was going to be damned for eternity, right? And tortured basically for eternity with eternal life. Comes back, tries to bring her back, and then in the second movie does it again, successfully does it this time. And when he needs help, instead of true love winning over, which I would argue it's not really true love, but instead of love winning over, um, she leaves him and runs, and then she, dies anyway. So
I don't think it was ever true love for her. I think it was definitely absolute obsession for him. And I
yeah,
think for her, it was, I can absolutely get this guy to do what I want him to do and get me out of this situation. And then I will worry later about the new situation I've gotten myself into. And maybe she did like him a little bit, but it was not, I'm gonna cross oceans of time to
right.
save you.
Or live inside a sarcophagus for
No,
1,000 years, right? Like,
no,
no,
it was not that kind of love.
definitely not. Now, sci-fi queens had,
I like how you had that quote up.
yeah,
Yeah,
what qualifies a
that
villain,
question.
a character to be called a villain.
And this is for me is maybe like the crux for like all of these characters, because when I'm thinking about, usually when I think about films, TV, literature, I think antagonist, protagonist. An antagonist can be a villain, but I don't think necessarily has to be a villain. Because in my mind, the antagonist is somebody who's working against the protagonist, but there's still a possibility that they are a good person. There's a possibility for redemption, or that they're just kind of maybe accidentally in the way. Whereas a villain to me is somebody who maybe can't necessarily be redeemed in the end. That there's more of a motive to what they're doing. That they're not just accidentally in the way of the protagonist. So in this case, it sounds like between films 1 and 2, she may be just an antagonist in the first one, but becomes a full villain in the second one.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's
Good.
the way I saw it. I mean, definitely the entire relationship, like Vance said, is not based on true love. It's based on like some sort of maybe codependence, some sort of trauma, some maybe a little bit of narcissism on her side. And then the second movie definitely kind of seals the deal for me on she is indeed a true villain. And I think it's down to like what is your motivation, right?
Mhm.
Like if your motivation is to like get justice for yourself, okay, not the best motivation, but not necessarily a villain, right? Depending on what kind of wrong happened to you, like Catwoman, if we go back to that, like brutally murdered by her boss, she wanted revenge because it was horrible, and she knew he would get away with it. Um, that's not really a villain to me. It's villain-ish, but I think it's like betraying somebody who loves you or that you love in this case because she claimed to have loved Imhotep. Um, I think that kind of makes her a villain is that betrayal of what what we were led to believe was her love of him. Um, of course, if your motivation is purely financial or power or something, then you're pretty much a villain, right? So
Yeah.
that's
I
pretty
mean,
hard.
I feel like her motivation was definitely and we don't see this until the second movie, is definitely like, this guy can probably get me eternal life.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
cool. And that's what she wanted.
I think the moment that the motivation becomes selfish, you're pushing more towards villain behavior than you are just a pure antagonist.
And with the context of the second movie and seeing how involved she was in the plan, you can kind of go from she was really a victim in the first film, and she was just trying to, leave her really controlling husband to, what did she do to get this husband?
Yeah.
Is she just kind of power hungry? You don't get enough information about her, sadly, to know if that was a marriage that she sought out herself, or if, he saw her and was like, "No, I want this beautiful woman." Like, we don't understand how that started. So, like, we don't know. But maybe she sought him out. Maybe she seduced him. Which I don't know. That was definitely not his first wife, because we know he has a daughter about the same age as her. So, I don't know. I want a movie of just her. Give us her origin story. Give us Saffron's origin story in a movie. Like, please deep dive on all of these characters for me.
They're amazing. They're amazing.
All the studio execs that are not listening to
Look,
this
if the
podcast.
Scorpion King can get his own movie, then I think she can get her own movie, right?
Absolutely.
She should have gotten, as opposed to the Scorpion. Anyway, won't go there.
Anyways, moving on. What's our next?
My sister is watching this. My sister is a big Scorpion King fan, so if you're watching this, sorry.
It's a fun movie. Our next category.
I'm excited for this one.
This one is so good. I'm probably just gonna let you guys go completely off.
Winn.
Winn.
I was telling Joseph right before this that I actually just finished rewatching season 7 of Deep Space Nine last week. So I am in my feelings about Winn.
It's okay. Can we just pause and talk about how incredible the acting is on Deep Space Nine as a whole? Because not only do we love the main characters, we love the side characters, and we love the villains. Like, the villains are so good. And you could
villains
maybe
in Star Trek.
say, "Oh, she's not really a villain," but I think she is. I think she is using her religion to not, like, she seems very devout. I think she very seriously believes in the religion. I do not doubt her faith whatsoever. But I do think that occasionally she does use it to control and hurt people. She does it on purpose. She does it with knowledge that she is going to hurt people. But in her head, it is for the greater good. It is for the religion.
I feel like sorry. I was gonna say I feel like all the way through up to season 6, you can make the argument that she is just she's an antagonist for the protagonist, but she's not necessarily a villain, that she truly does believe what she's doing. She believes what she's doing is the right thing. I think in season 7, all of that turns on its head, and she truly does become a villain at that point. I think there's no going back after season 7.
There's no going back after season 7, but I would say, I think season 2 or season 1, where she's backing, the overthrow of the legitimate government of Bajor. And then when the guy is, basically exposed for being a traitor, she, leaves him high and dry. To me, that was oh, she is an actual villain. She's not just annoying. She is a power-hungry, narcissist. Now, evil, I would say so because of experiences, but you're right. There are glimpses of good in other seasons, when Jake and Kira are possessed by
the Pa Wraiths,
and the prophets. She does something, and I think she does it because she doesn't actually want the station to be blown up, and she doesn't actually want this horrible thing to happen, which is ironic because in season 7 she brings it to fruition, right?
Yeah.
So I think they tried to redeem her a little bit and then just absolutely decided that she was just going to be a pure villain.
I think it's interesting because I think in the first 6 seasons, especially when you see her dialogue with Kira, you can see moments where you feel for her because you understand that she truly does believe in her religion. She truly does I think in the first few seasons believe that she is meant to be Kai, that she should be the religious leader. She struggles with the jealousy of Sisko because he is not from Bajor, and she can't understand why the prophets would do that because she's never spoken to the prophets, which I think is an interesting thing that when you finally get to season 7, you realize, oh yeah, Kai Winn never has spoken to the prophets. It makes a lot of sense. But then in that final season, she fully admits that, you know, she's going to do whatever it takes to have power, to be in control. And there's that moment where she has with Kira, where she almost changes her mind and Kira says, you need to step down as Kai and then it'll be fine and the prophets will understand. And she's like, I'm not going to step down. And then it's like, from that point on, you know, there's no going back. And then she just fully turns away from the prophets and from the core of her religion and goes to the Pah Wraith. So at that point, I think definitely villain. Yeah. But in the beginning, she's more complex. She's definitely more complex all the way up to that point. Because there is some back and forth.
She is, but I think when well, okay, I will say this, and this is kind of how I feel about another character we might get to today. But she goes full evil because, like, the death of her assistant, like, she just covers it up and doesn't care because it gets her more power. But at the very, very end, her final act is to try to help Sisko, right? So even though she is a villain and it does not absolve her from all of the bad things that she has done, at the end of the day, she became Kai to fulfill one purpose, which is to help the prophets, right? To help Sisko stop.
I still don't think she's wherever the prophets want the good people of Bajor to be. I think she's probably with the Pah Wraiths, but
right. I mean,
you're right,
she definitely,
though. Yeah. She does have a moment where there could be some absolution there, but I you know, in many cases of villains, I could almost give it to them. In her case, I feel like, I don't know. It's the last moment of her life. She knows she's not going to survive this circumstance, and she has to choose between Sisko and Dukat. I mean, there is no choice, even if you are a villain.
Yeah,
right.
A more villainous thing would be to turn away from the other villain, right? I mean,
like a Cheney backing a Democratic presidential candidate because Joel Dukat's running for president. Well, just saying. Anyway,
no, but I don't think you get a cookie for doing one good thing, knowing you're about to die.
Maybe,
and occasionally, we well, not occasionally, we see this all the time. And I was grumpy about this when we talked about Picard and Shaw at the very, very end. They're like, let's give him a cookie because he did this thing right before he died and knew he was dying. No, you don't get a cookie for that.
How about, like, not a good cookie, but like a pre-processed, like, really nasty, like, kind of cookie?
You don't even get a cookie substitute, okay?
Fine.
You don't get a replicated cookie for doing one singular good thing at the end, because you can do an action that other people might see as good with bad intentions. And I may very well have saved Sisko in the end because she was trying very, very hard to be like, see, I'm a good person. This is my last chance to prove I'm a good person. We don't know if she was doing it because she legitimately wanted him to be safe. Like, we
I
don't
think
know
she just
that was
I
good
think she
acting.
just legitimately was so angry at Dukat at that moment that he
Yeah.
came back as the chosen one of the Pah-wraiths, as the emissary for the Pah-wraiths and not her. I think if the Pah-wraiths had chosen her, there's no way she would have helped Cisco at the end there. Absolutely no way.
Okay.
And so with
Which would
that
have been
motivation,
interesting when
that is
Dukat
an
had
evil act.
done
She
that.
is literally doing it just to be like, fuck you to Gul Dukat.
That's fair.
You don't get a cookie for
Okay.
doing something
Okay, but
maybe good.
This comment, though.
so
Garrick
the
is not a
comment is
villain. He's
Garrick
an
is not a
anti-hero.
villain.
He's an
Yeah,
anti-hero.
he's not a villain. If you haven't read the book that deep dives into Garrick's life, highly recommend. Highly recommend. Can't remember the name of it right now, but
I
it's
mean,
really good.
Garrick pretends to be the villain. He pretends to be the villain, but he knows he's not the villain. And we know he's not either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only person who's not sure is Bashir until the end, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And that's because Bashir is so obsessed with the chief because his one true love is anyway.
Well, you know, that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole anyway.
Okay,
That's
we
another
could deep
episode.
dive into Deep Space Nine characters sometime. I would love
We
to
should
do
do
that.
that.
That would be
Oh my
super
God.
Or we just
fun
do
because
villains
they
of
are
Star
so
Trek.
good. That would be that would be so much fun. But I love how complex all of those villains are. So I do think, I mean, we could do that. We could put that on the list of all the episodes we want to eventually
I have to
do.
give Deep Space Nine credit though, because just really quickly, because with most of their villains, they really they don't hold back. At the end, they are villains. They don't they don't pull like a Loki at the end. You're like, well, actually, maybe he's an anti-hero. Actually, it's a good guy. No, they're like, this is a full-on bad person. We want to see that. We want you to see that they are.
Yeah.
So I'd like Deep Space Nine for doing that.
Yes.
All right,
I love that for them. Moving on, I know Marty has
I'm not this far yet, but okay. It's okay.
watched enough Babylon 5. Bester does show up very early in Babylon 5, so I think you are familiar with this character. Here again, we have another fanatic. In this case, he is a fanatic for Psychor. He is obviously incredibly intelligent. He obviously very firmly believes that everything he is doing is for the best. Like, he thinks it's for the best. He's doing whatever he can for Psychor, for all the little psychics, all the little telepaths. He seems to very firmly believe that. And he also believes that any rule or law that would prevent him from doing what he thinks is right is just kind of a guideline. So you will see him throughout the show. Not really a spoiler, Marty, but sort of.
Yeah.
But he will do absolutely evil things. To further his cause, to protect his people, to get what he wants. But then you also see him do some like incredibly kind things. He swoops in and saves members of the crew when he didn't necessarily have to do that. They didn't ask him to, they didn't want him to. But it is definitely for his own reasons, his own desires, and it is all to protect Psychor.
What separates him for me from somebody like Magneto is that he has hurt members of his own group for his own interests in horrible ways that did not have to happen. Right? So like Magneto's very much a character who does some bad things to save his people, even if he has to fight against some of his own people who are stopping him from doing what he thinks is right. So in my book, that's a different story. Bester kind of does some really horrible things to his own people because he's trying to make himself and his people more powerful at the cost of individuals. And that's what really makes him a fanatic and evil in my book.
He is without question a villain. I don't think there's any, oh, he gets redeemed here.
No.
Oh, this is a question. I think he is introduced and we immediately hate him. And he is very consistent in his character the entire show. He is exactly who he is the entire show. And I love him so much.
He's the villain you love to hate.
He is a very good villain to hate, just like Kai Winn is. I absolutely love to hate her. Both of those characters, the moment that you see them on screen, I am angry. They don't even have to be on screen.
Yeah.
People just start talking about them and I am like, nope, I'm angry. I'm upset. This is wrong.
I mean, that's the mark of a good villain.
Yes,
right?
They
exactly.
They're well written. They're well acted. Incredible. I love him. When and if you ever finish Babylon 5, I think it would be fun to do a deep dive into a lot more of the characters because they are similar to Deep Space Nine in that they are also very, very well developed and very nuanced.
I mean, it's on my winter watch list, so hoping to binge it as soon as things calm down.
I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for you.
Okay.
I did struggle with the first few episodes, but I think I'm at the point where I can finally through. So
I
beginning was a little rough.
I think I love the first season. I think the first season is important. Some people say to skip it. I say definitely don't do that. But there is a tone shift in the second season, and I think you will be like, okay, this is a little bit.
All right.
This is a little bit easier, but don't skip the first season.
I won't.
You need a context.
Definitely too OCD for that.
It's very good. It's very good. Another Fanatic. So Cardinal, from my brain stopped.
The Three Musketeers.
Yes. The 1993 version. Did I get my dates wrong, or is it an 80s movie?
It's a 90s.
It's a 90s movie.
It's a 90s movie. With Tim Curry. First off, it is unfair to have this man do so many incredible villains, and then not have people sympathize with the villain. And I love this man. Unfair. First off, unfair. Second off, we have another amazing Fanatic. I do truly think he has faith. He has faith in his religion. I definitely think he does not have as much faith as Bester or Kai Winn.
No.
I would agree.
I think he definitely has more. This is my faith. I agree with this faith, but also I would like to use this faith to manipulate and control.
I was going to say he gives really Frollo vibes from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like I use my faith as a reason to be able to do the things that I do.
Yes.
Right.
As opposed to really being for what I do is for the faith.
Yeah.
He's not a Joel Osteen type faith person. And look, I'm from Houston. Joel Osteen will forever be a villain to Houstonians because of locking the doors to his church during Hurricane Harvey. Beside the point. Not beside the point, but there are people who use religion just for power, but they don't actually have faith. But you're right. I do think the Cardinal is Richelieu. My French is horrible. he does have that faith, but he knows that gives him power as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's seeking, right? It's just, let me destroy these institutions so that I can have more power with the Pope. And over France or whatever he's looking for.
He is definitely in it for the power. But I do think he has faith, and I think he's very fascinating. He's also a little bit of a mastermind. Like, he has plots within plots. He is an incredible villain. I will say, though, of all of the adaptations of the Three Musketeers, Tim Curry is obviously my favorite, and I do like him best in that movie, even over the book, which, if you have ever tried to read the book, I think you will understand. For me, it was a very rough read. I did not enjoy that one.
There's a
But
lot
yeah.
of French
So
literature.
there's a
I
question
think,
here about whether Peter Capaldi played this character just before Doctor Who. Yes, he did. Just as a side note.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about the Cardinal. Like, I love the movies that I've seen of the Three Musketeers. I've seen even foreign versions of it. I'm not gonna say adaptations because it's a foreign book. And it's always complex, and the Cardinal is always kind of like this complex like villain, but definitely a fanatical villain. But I'm not as well versed.
Definitely firmly in the villain category, though, because I feel like
yeah.
this character is like on probably the top 100 list of like literary and film villains of all time.
I mean, he is up there. He is good. He's complex. I just happened to pick this particular movie version because this is my favorite version of him. People have redone
we all love
the Three
Tim Curry.
Musketeers a lot. Listen, Joseph, don't give me faces. We could have done an episode just about Tim Curry villains, okay? And we might.
We will do an episode about Tim Curry.
Tim Curry plays a villain like nobody else. Period.
Yeah.
I love him.
I mean, I feel that his Long John Silver was like an awakening for a lot of people.
Definitely.
Or maybe just me. Maybe that's just my own personal awakening, but like,
wait,
I feel like there was
Long John Silver
in the Muppets Treasure Island.
In the Muppet Treasure Island.
Oh,
the best Treasure Island adaptation.
Look,
it was an
because
awakening.
Tim Curry is so over the top, right? Like, he leaned.
You didn't even notice there were Muppets in the movie.
He's just over the top. It's not like I'm going to lean into being a villain. It's like, no, I'm just going to be the most ridiculous, like, flamboyant villain possible. And I know this is why you love him, Van, because
I do. I love him. He's big and he's over the top.
But we have to say, when the hotel reception manager in Home Alone 2, I mean, that is a real life villain to me. Like,
that is.
This person really exists and works at every establishment I have a problem at.
Yes,
so
absolutely. That may be his most terrifying role that he has ever played.
Agreed.
Okay, are we ready to move on?
Yeah,
let's move on.
The Mastermind. A lot of the villains that we talk about fall into more than one category. The Cardinal is definitely also a mastermind, but Emperor Palpatine, mastermind, plots within plots. He had goals, he had aspirations, and he absolutely is so evil. He's so evil.
I mean, he didn't just have concepts of the plan, he had a full-on plan and contingency plans.
This to me is like the core manipulative villain character. I mean, he plays the long game. The longest game.
Long game. And he does it so well. He does it. He's so good.
And you have to watch all of the movies to fully appreciate how well he plays it, right? And I know some people don't like certain trilogies, and that's each their own. But what I love about it is you are exposed to him first, of course, out of chronological order, as this like deep-seated, scary, powerful overlord, right? Because when you see Star Wars, Darth Vader is like, oh my god, this villain is so badass.
Right.
And then when Empire comes around and you start talking about the Emperor and he's like subservient to someone, you're like, who is this like king of villains subservient to? Like this absolute boss is subservient to some what is his power? Like and
Yeah.
just the way he is so openly evil and yet still able to tempt the best of people into siding with them because he reads people so well and he knows what their fears are. And if you know what somebody's fears are, you know, like, you know how to lure them in. And then we get to see,
I think
like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like you're saying, I think for me, it wasn't even the fact that he was able to manipulate Anakin into being Vader, but the moment when you see he comes very close to convincing Luke, that's when I realized, I'm like, this is a real villain. Like this guy knows what he's doing. This is the kind of villain that can make your heroes into the worst versions of themselves.
Yeah, and then we see it in the prequel trilogy, where it's like, look, I kind of liked Anakin throughout that movie.
We'll talk about Anakin later.
Aspects, right?
Put a pin in that.
Putting a pin in that.
Put a pin in that.
But look, I have a coworker, and so my coworker Tori feels like Anakin lost the most in the entire Star Wars universe. And her arguments are solid on that, if you think about it. Because, look, he is this broken, former enslaved individual who has the opportunity to do so much good and is corrupted by this absolute horrible villain into doing horrible things.
We've got him later on the list. Put a pin in him. Come on, put a pin in him. We're talking about the Emperor right now.
But that's the thing. The Emperor is so amazingly evil because he's able to take all of these characters and twist things, right? And even once he's dead, he's able to manipulate the situation so he can come back.
Yes. He's the mastermind. He has plans within plans. He has plots within plots. He is so irredeemable. Like there's no chance at any point once we realize who he is. Like in the first three, like once you're like, oh yeah, that's the guy. We know this guy. We've met this guy before. Yeah, no, he's evil. He's evil, but he is so good in the first three movies and the prequels okay, here is the system that I need to work within. I would like to corrupt these people and this system and give myself all the power. Amazingly done.
I think he's the perfect example. Yeah, he's the perfect example, I think, of what George Lucas wanted the Sith to represent. These characters that are willing to wait. They are willing to bide their time to make sure that things go their way. And I think one of the reasons why the Emperor turns out to be so fantastic is because we got the opportunity to have the same actor portray him over such a broad, long period of time. And I don't know. It's hard to top this character, I think, when it comes to like real villains, especially in sci-fi and fantasy.
He's good.
Well, because he's an embodiment of pure evil, right? Like he gets his power from what is essentially evil, the dark side. Now we can go into like, is there really like evil and good, and light and dark? But
Do we need to do an episode where you just rant about the Force and the Jedi and the Sith, Joseph?
And I think, okay, look.
Yes or no? Yes or no, Joseph?
We could. And I think it's funny because I am definitely more of a Star Trek person than a Star Wars person, but I can deep dive into Star Wars because I love Star Wars as well.
The title of that episode is "Are the Jedi the Real Villains?"
Yes. That will be like title of an episode, and it'll be me like, yes, and then cut to the out music, and that's it.
Cut to a 250-page PhD thesis on the matter.
Look.
Read it.
Look.
No, I see it now. I see it now.
Fully admit that the Emperor is pure evil. But
he is.
I feel like a lot of the people who fall into his trap do so because the Jedi basically use child soldiers, and they have good intentions. That's where I'm at. And the Jedi are the real villains.
I think Scott makes an interesting comment here about that we can humanize Darth Vader as redeemable, but not the Emperor. But I think it's because we don't see any instance really of the Emperor showing that he is not being manipulative. Everything he does is in course of his plan. So I feel like we don't get any moments where we see a possible opportunity for him to redeem himself.
Well, I mean,
we'll get to Darth Vader. We'll get to Darth Vader. Don't worry. He's coming.
Okay, let's move on because I will.
I know.
I need to get to that.
Moving on to everybody's favorite, the Borg Queen. All of her different versions. Another beautiful mastermind. I love her in every version except Picard. She's a little boring. She's a little flat. Her plan is, I'm gonna kidnap this guy. I'm gonna turn him into a Borg. He's gonna get away. And then hopefully at some point in the future, he's going to have a genetic kid. And then I'm going to use that genetic kid.
Spoilers, by the way.
That's not just plot within plots. That's like the most convoluted plan I have ever heard of. Like I'm gonna...
my question is going to be, is she really a villain?
Go? No, I don't know that she is a villain.
Because the Borg Queen, if you think about it, she's this is what her species does, right? This is how they propagate their species. This is how they learn, how they grow. So is she a villain, or is she just fulfilling her,
I think to know for sure, we need a Borg origin story. Again, I want the pretty lady to have the origin story so we figure out everything about her. And we have to figure out how the Borg were created. What was the intent behind it? Because she's not necessarily going around being like the most evil person ever. She is, as you said, this is how they make more Borg.
But they don't have to. She was an individual at some point, and she maintains her sense of individuality and dominates the entire collective by her will. Aww.
Dagger has thoughts on the Borg Queen.
He has lots of thoughts. I agree. Let's listen. Yes. Very good thoughts. We approve and we agree. Exactly. Thank you, Dagger.
I feel like yes, but I guess the one area where I would say maybe she is a villain is that she maintains some of her humanity, right? She's not as assimilated as the rest, So I guess in that sense, she could be considered a villain.
I do think
because she allows everybody else to lose what makes their individuality.
When we see her in season 2 of Picard, and she is just very intentionally doing things to mess with people, to mess with their head, to just not even for a good purpose.
Right.
But then also at the very, very end of Picard season 2, Seven is hurt. Seven is dying. And she is convinced to save Seven, but not turn Seven back into a Borg. Like, to help her just enough that she doesn't bleed out and die, but not so much that she becomes Borg. Like, that there is a little glimpse there that she does care. She recognizes Seven as like one of her children. So yeah, I mean, evil, sure, definitely. I see where you're coming from, but also,
Look, I am just saying that what makes her truly evil is removing free will from so many people, right?
Yeah.
And her being able to maintain some semblance of identity. Because she understands how important free will is to the cultures she assimilates, but she finds them imperfect. So unless it meets her definition or the collective's definition of perfect, it cannot exist. And that to me is what really makes her a villain.
And I agree. That's the only thing for me too. And because we don't know the origin story of the Borg, I feel like that is the linchpin on her being, villain or something else.
But we know they've been around for hundreds of years. We know that what was the name of that species that was on the planet in hibernation? The Boudoir or something. So like the Dragon's Teeth episode of Voyager, where they find like this corridor and they land on this planet and they find all these people in stasis and they revive them. And so they're trying to find another planet for them. And every planet the guy says, this planet or that planet, the Vaudoir, yes. Seven says it's the Borg control that planet. And he's like, they've spread so far. They only had assimilated a few dozen races when I was around. And that was like 900 years before. So we know that somebody in the Borg has been around for hundreds of years doing this, right? So is it the same Borg Queen or some version of the Borg Queen? Like it's hinted that she exists outside of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like her consciousness just gets put into new bodies, is what it seems like. But yeah, she's a villain because she's able to survive all this time and force her will on people. To me, anyway.
Yeah, she's a villain, and I love her.
Of course. I mean,
I would prefer if she was a little less villainy around, the characters that I like, but I support a women's wrongs.
I get that. Now this I'm putting up because this is a theory that V'ger created.
Yeah, this is interesting.
And then there's also the theory that the planet killer from the TOS episode was created to stop the Borg as well.
The crystal entity?
No. In the original series.
Oh, from TOS.
Yeah. The big like Dune worm looking thing in space. I
love how you're now referencing Dune. It makes me so happy.
I'm giving you a bone. Okay.
I feel like a villain myself.
I get the reference now.
It's funny because it's like I would love to know where the Borg came from, but at the same time, I kind of like the mystery and suspense because I'm afraid that if we ever did get the origin story of the Borg, that it might disappoint.
Yes.
So maybe just the origin story of the Borg Queen would be interesting because maybe the Borg go back further.
If we can get the origin story, as long as it's not Terry Matalas who's doing the origin story, I think we'll be okay.
I will not go that far. Like, okay, it's not him, but there are plenty of other people who would mess it up. So, I'm okay with it being a mystery forever.
Correct. Somebody like him, is what I'm saying. That's the true villain into all of this.
All right. Moving on. Imhotep.
Imhotep.
Yes. More the mummy characters. The mummy himself. He is, I would say, without a doubt, evil and
Yeah,
without
he's
a doubt
bad.
a villain.
No
I
notes.
don't think there is any question here at all. And we see in the first movie, we don't even need the second movie, but the second movie definitely adds layers to his plan. But in the first movie, he has not only a plan, but like contingency plans. Like he had a plan to resurrect the love of his life, but also in case that didn't go well, he had a second plan to come back and try again. I love him. Um Absolutely love him. Definitely a villain. Definitely running around terrorizing people, killing people, uh, kidnapping women who look enough like his love so he can steal their body. Not good guy behavior at all. He's definitely a villain. I do love his layers of plans though. He is consistently trying to be multiple steps ahead of everyone around him. Um, and I
It's
love that for him.
I I'm torn, right? Because like if he was only motivated by love, yes, it's a warped sense of love. But it almost feels like I need more details on his past because either he's just a complete horrible villain or he's like this scorned person who did horrible things because of love. And while it's like misplaced and he's still a villain, there's like a semblance of, okay, maybe there was good in him at one point. Or he's just a horrible, horrible forever person.
See, I
I
feel like
mean,
if you're making choices based on scorned love, you're worse. You're worse. Like that
yeah,
makes you more of a villain to me.
Yes.
you're
So
immediately a villain. But he didn't get to the position he was in without lots of years of planning, and all of that would have come before Anck-Su-Namun. Like she had to have come in while he was already making his evil plan. Like just timeline wise, he didn't get to the very top and be like, "Oh, because of this pretty girl, I'm going to come up with this crazy wild plan to control the entire world." Um I
I
definitely think he already had that plan.
did do you think he wanted to like be immortal the entire
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
But he
I
was
think a
lost in the
better question.
sarcophagus.
I think a better
That
question
was
would
not
be:
part of his plan. But if
would it have mattered if it were her? Could it have been another beautiful woman? Would he have done the same thing?
yeah, I think so.
Then he's a villain, right?
Well, yeah, no, I mean he's definitely a villain either way, right? Like I'm not taking away the fact that he's a villain. And I disagree with Gregory's comment. I'm not going to bring it up on there, right? Like he he I think they used each other to get what they wanted. But what I'm not sure of is like, did he start off wanting this unlimited power, or did he fall into it because, oh well, I can get this woman and get unlimited power, and I'm just turning my back on all of my training. Like that's the part of it that I'm not sure about. That yeah, still a villain,
Here's
still did
what
a horrible
we
thing.
do, Joseph. We'll watch The Mummy and The Mummy Returns again. Oh no, my arm is twisted. Oh
I'll have to
no.
I need to
rewatch them
review
too.
this because I don't
It'll be
remember it well.
awful. It'll be
Yes,
awful.
I
I
definitely
I
so
think
awful.
he had to have had a thirst for power and control to be in the position that he was in. before he found the pretty girl. And
Yeah.
I don't think the pretty girl knew enough about the religion and the magic like he did to even be like, hey, you should have this crazy plan. It was definitely him being like, I want to do this, and her being like, yeah, let's do this. Let's rule the world together. Um,
I really think they're
yeah,
co-villains, but I
they are
wonder.
beautiful villains, and they're villains together.
Co-masterminds.
I would not call her a mastermind. I don't think she is like making plans within plans. I think hers are very straightforward. Who can I seduce? Who can I manipulate right now?
Okay, so I'm gonna borrow this line, right? Like, she lacks conviction,
Yes.
but he definitely always had conviction. Like, she was gonna be his no matter what it took, and she just went along for the ride because she wanted away from a situation. And it's much easier to leave a priest than it is to leave the ruler of a nation, right? So to some aspect, I think it was just a matter of like convenience for her, but which does not absolve her from being evil, but it definitely is
I
a
think it's
different
a
fight.
matter of more power.
Yeah.
She thought that the Pharaoh had the most power. And then she realized, wait, nope, this guy can do a little bit more. This guy can give me a little bit more. Well, actually, I mean, Pharaoh and ruler of the world is like a huge jump. So
Yeah, I
more
mean,
than a little bit more. But yeah,
becoming. Go ahead.
she definitely was seeking power more than she was seeking companionship in any way. But
I just
we are
kind of.
talking about him. I'm gonna get distracted by her again. Um,
Oh no.
oh no. Um, I love his plans within plans. And I love his absolute arrogance that he kind of tells the people around him his plan. Like, this is my plan. You can't stop me.
The fact that all of his like priests died alongside him so he could get this. I don't know. It's just such a horrible plan because like he suffered for centuries. Anyway, okay, let's move on. We've got other things to talk about.
Yes.
The villain or not? I love this.
This is your category more than it's mine. I'm sorry, Gollum Smeagol is a villain.
He's a
I'm
villain.
going to say not a villain.
He's a villain. He's
I'm saying not a
villain-ish. Okay, what makes him a
Okay,
villain?
first off, Marty doesn't get a vote.
What? I've seen the movies.
Okay,
Dagger.
I
Is he a
understand
villain?
that Smeagol does a lot of things to help Frodo. I understand he is very much a victim of the power of the ring. But you're going to tell me that a completely good person gets the ring for 2 seconds and then kills his cousin.
Okay, but also the ring is imbued with the power of ultimate evil.
See, but I don't think there are any completely good people. So
Okay.
Samwise is completely good. And
Samwise is completely good. We can all agree on that. I'm just saying
we're going to fight.
Nobody else
in the real
nobody
world.
else who gets this ring
In normal literature
immediately goes and kills the person next to them.
Okay.
Look, he's very weak. He's weak of character, weak of mind, body, and spirit. Okay.
Right. He is a weak-minded person.
And I don't think being weak-minded necessarily means you have to be a villain. I think that he becomes a villain because of the influence of the ring. Was he a great person before? No, absolutely not. But I don't think he would have been on a track to villainhood if he hadn't come across the ring.
Well, the ring tempts everybody, right?
Yes.
Like that's the whole purpose is Sauron put all of his essence into the ring so that it would be ultimately powerful. And so even somebody like Isildur, who is a noble human, is tempted by its power and refuses to destroy it.
Yes, he
So,
refuses to destroy it, and Elrond should have kicked him straight into the lava. That would have saved a whole lot of time. But Isildur does not turn around and stab Elrond because
okay,
Elrond's trying to get him to destroy the ring.
but
Wait,
Isildur is a noble person
but
imbued with the blood of elves.
he's older too, right? I mean, he's got more life
Yeah.
experience. I feel like Smeagol was just like, I mean, like
Okay.
normal dude, right? Normal dude
And
will put the ring on and become bad, right?
and here's the thing about people like Isildur, right? Like humans have a short lifespan, except Isildur lives for hundreds of years because he is part elf, right? So the lineage of that entire line, they live longer. And it's not really like, unless you watch the extended version of the movies, you're not going to hear that, right? So like in the theatrical release, that's not talked about, but in the books and in the extended release, you get that information. Isildur has spent hundreds of years fighting against Sauron's power, and he's a very noble, honorable person, and he is still tempted by the ring. And now you're talking about
Also,
basically halfling rednecks who don't know any better.
also, also, Frodo, Samwise, and Bilbo all knew what they were walking into, right? Like they
Correct.
knew, like we're on this quest for this with this ring. The ring is bad. We know that.
Right.
Did Smeagol have that information when he went into this? I don't. Nobody was like, Smeagol, now sit down. This ring is bad. Prepare yourself for like this entire journey that you're on with all your besties. No, he's out there by himself. He doesn't have any besties.
Well, he
I
had a
mean,
bestie. He killed his
He
bestie.
had
Like
a
that.
well,
I
bestie.
mean,
He had a
yeah,
bestie.
but his bestie
cousin was out there fishing with
but
him,
his
and they
bestie
find a
didn't like
ring.
warn him about it. Like they didn't know. Like
Okay,
right.
they all
well,
the other
here's
guys
the
went on
thing.
the journey with the knowledge that it was bad and evil and this could happen.
So,
Smeagol wasn't
okay,
prepared. Precious.
I'm just saying, his cousin gets the ring. His cousin has the ring. The ring isn't even in his possession, and he kills his cousin for it. Okay, fine. He's just the weakest being
so
on the planet and was seduced by the ring over there and killed his cousin. I'm just saying, I don't think that this guy was very
I'm not
good.
saying that he's innocent, right? But there is a question as are his evil actions purely his or partly due to the influence of ultimate evil, right? Now, he
That's what
does
I'm saying.
decide to do the bad
But in
things.
layman's terms.
What?
That's what I'm saying, but in layman's terms.
Right. Okay, look. I'm very verbose sometimes.
I'm
I
just
I I
saying.
feel that he shows that he wants to be a good person, and then he feels betrayed and goes back to the villainous ways, right? Like, he's definitely a broken, evil person, but I feel like a lot of it
I'm not giving the villain a cookie for doing like one
I
good thing.
I'm giving him a cookie because he didn't
He's
start
not
off a
getting a
villain.
cookie. I'll give him a potato. He'll
I
hate
like
it.
potatoes. We're gonna give him second breakfast. Okay.
But, like,
That
not a big second breakfast, just, like, oatmeal or something, like
I think he's a villain. I think he is more on the henchman side of things than anything, but I don't think that he is good enough to not be a villain.
if you okay, first, this comment, Van is your right,
I
but
love it.
if you give a villain a
If you give
cookie
a villain a cookie, Van will
Will
come
they
up
do the
behind
right
you and
thing?
say, "No, they don't get a cookie."
Okay.
If you give a villain a cookie, will they do the right thing?
No.
Look, we will move on. We will move
Okay.
on from poor
Okay.
Smeagol.
Magneto. He
Not
did
a
nothing
not a
wrong in
villain.
his entire life. He was completely right and justified, and, if he had had more support from his friends, he probably would have it wouldn't even be a question.
Here's the thing, Magneto was right.
I That's what I said.
He just does everything for his love for Charles, so.
If Charles had been a better friend and a better lover, then I don't think that we would be in the position where we were even questioning
Where are you
whether
getting
Magneto
lover
would.
from?
You are talking my language. Yes.
Where are you not getting lover from?
I'm sorry. I get it.
That is. Listen.
I wasn't expecting it. I don't know why I wasn't expecting it. I should have been, but you're right.
If you're gonna tell me that those two aren't just a little bit gay for each other, I'm gonna laugh at you because they are.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing.
Just saying.
Magneto is an interpretation of Malcolm X, thus not a villain. End of story.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you. I don't think Magneto is a villain.
I think he makes mistakes along the way, but I think he's not a villain.
He does
make mistakes.
Bad actions. But I definitely think he struggles with any harm that he causes.
He gets a cookie.
I will give him a cookie.
I would give him a tin of cookies because he probably needs them after all this drama and after Charles not calling him back at night.
Cookies, and he would turn it into a weapon, and he would slaughter a bunch of people.
As they deserve. Like I said, he has never done one wrong thing in his entire life, and I love him. Sorry.
I love Magneto.
I would love to watch him kill people with a tin of cookies, actually.
Magneto is one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. This character I feel very strongly about, and I feel like he was always intentionally written to be seen as twofold. That if you only see his superficial acts of violence, then you see him as a villain. But if you understand who he is and the reasoning behind the things that he does, then you can't see him as a villain. Because society is against him. The world is against him and his people, and he's just trying to carve a place out for them to live.
Yes.
Literally, most of his actions are trying to build a safe place for his people to exist.
Yes.
That's it. And they never let him be.
No.
Because
even when he builds a planet, and he just puts everybody on this planet, people still come after him. If they just left him alone, let his people alone, let them live their lives.
So
there wouldn't have been
not a villain.
Not a villain.
Agreed.
Just protecting his people.
Yes. Stay away from Asteroid M. Leave him be.
Ooh, moving on. Godzilla. Absolutely not a villain. He also has never done one thing wrong in his entire life. I love and adore him. If he had just had more coffee when they so rudely woke him up, all of this could have been avoided. They really started it.
I mean,
don't fuck around.
American foreign policy nuked his existence, his habitat. He turns into a giant monster, and then everybody's like, "Oh no, he's a villain." No, he's cranky because you mutated him and took away his fish. Come on.
And then after that, he gets woken up. I mean, if you just give him coffee.
If somebody woke me up from a nap, I would look like the villain too.
I have.
We've all been there. Absolutely not the villain, just adorable. Sorry.
When I was much younger, and my youngest brother is 19 years younger. So when he was 3, right, I was he was so adorable. We were training in martial arts, right? And so he was little 3-year-old brother. And he's just adorable. I was taking a nap after martial arts class. I was just passed out, asleep. And my little brother walks into the room and jumps on top of me, right? And scares the crap out of me. I didn't know what was going on. I opened my eyes as I was holding my brother down on the floor. And then I saw him and I let go and I was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And my mom walks in and cracks up laughing because she knew what he was going to do. And she sees him on the floor and he was fine. I didn't hurt him or anything. I just removed the obstacle and put it someplace safe.
And
I was
hopefully he
cranky.
learned his lesson and leaves sleeping people alone for the rest of his life, right?
Don't surprise somebody who's taking a nap because especially when they're significantly bigger than you.
And
Because
just don't bother
Yeah,
sleeping people. I
like
think we
Godzilla.
can establish that. Like
right.
Godzilla, like every Disney princess who is sleeping and somebody comes along and kisses.
Leave her
Yeah, leave her
alone.
alone.
Let her
Let her
sleep.
sleep.
Basically, this is it, right? Like if you're gonna
Is Snow
swat
White a
away
villain?
somebody,
Is Snow
Snow
White a
White
villain?
should be a villain.
If I was
she
Snow White,
enslaved
I would
little
be a
people.
villain.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah, Scott, you're right.
Yeah. No argument
Magneto
here.
is definitely an allegory. Godzilla probably is one too. I don't know which one you're
I think
talking
they're
about,
all
but yeah,
allegories.
probably.
they are.
Uh,
Godzilla's my favorite, by the way. Like I love Godzilla. With
I included him just for you. You're welcome.
I appreciate that. And also,
And I
like
like
in
that
later
Godzilla
movies,
was concluded in this section and not the later section.
No, no, definitely not.
because
Definitely
he's
not.
not a villain. He's not.
Right.
He
I
even
mean,
fights for Earth later on, right? Like he
yeah,
fights against
he's
the
he's
big
a cute
bad
little guy.
monsters.
He's just a cute little guy. Moving on, we have I'm going to be very careful with my words when we discuss the selfish narcissistic group. I have more experience with narcissists
My
than
favorite.
I would like to have. Um, so Gul Dukat, he runs around saying, I am doing this for my people. I am doing this for Cardassia, but he definitely intentionally does things that are unnecessary just to anger people and upset people and hurt people. He is very twisted and very evil. And anytime he walks on the screen, I would like to punch the screen. He makes me violent. I hate him so much.
I love Dukat, and I love Dukat because to me he is the perfect villain. Because this is the perfect example of a villain. Because I remember this is the first time I watched Deep Space Nine. I was younger. I love Dukat. I thought this character is so cool because I was really into villains, and I thought this guy is a real bad guy. He's really cool. And then you get to the end, and you realize just how horrible he is. You get to the part with his daughter, with Zael, and you're just like,
Oh,
this guy is so bad. And when you add it all up, Zael, Kira's mother, Winn, the Pa Wraiths, this guy doesn't care about his people. He just wants to be in charge. He just wants to have power. He wants to go down in history as being this great leader. He thinks he's Magneto. He's the opposite of Magneto.
No. I mean, he says in an episode, I did what I did to make Cardassia powerful again.
yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
I mean, this is in the 90s. It's very, or like somebody on the writing staff of Deep Space Nine had a crystal ball because it's
hard to watch him now with modern
difficult to
history.
watch
It's
him
much
now.
harder to watch him now than it was when I first saw Deep Space Nine, for sure.
I think so. There's a few things that just put him in this irredeemable side of things where I don't think he's capable of any good at all, right?
No.
The fact that he had an entire speech to seduce enslaved people to be his toys, even though he was married and had kids, right? Like to the point where another goal is like quoting what he's about to say and do. Like that shows malicious intent and the fact that he can say it with such obvious charisma is disgusting, right? And it's manipulative, and that episode really bothered me. And then what he did to Kai Winn, right? Like, don't like the Kai, like, cannot stand her. But that was essay, like, essential.
I mean, nothing he ever did with any Bajoran wasn't SA because all of it.
I mean, his treatment of Kira.
All of it was under threat and coercion.
Yes.
So,
And
Yeah.
the fact that they dared hint, and this was Berman's like influence, I'm sure, right? That there might be a romance between Kira and Dukat. I was like, no, absolutely not. This cannot happen. And they pulled away from it super hard
No.
because I think,
I believe Nana said absolutely not. She
yeah,
had a lot of things to say about her character, and I don't think that she would have even allowed that to
no, and
flourish.
I love
But
the
yeah,
I mean,
fact
it
no,
would have ruined her character. It would have ruined her entire character arc.
yeah,
I mean, as horrible as it sounds, it made sense for that to kind of happen with Kai Wynn's character because it kind of was following her arc to put her on that dark path. But Kira was always very strong in her feelings about Cardassia and Bajor, the resistance, the occupation, and I, the scenes between Kira and Zael in the beginning. Her reticence to even consider the friendship of this young girl because of the strong emotional baggage she had. There's no way that a romance between her and Dukat would have made sense.
no. I mean, Dukat. The reason why Dukat is such a compelling modern like character for modern times is because he fits the theme of these horrible figures from history throughout history, right? These like extremely powerful, narcissistic.
Sorry,
There
I'm
goes
not
Marty.
laughing at you, Joseph.
I know. It's
there is a mischievous cat doing cat
yeah.
nonsense behind
The cat
Marty.
was eating books, so
So like
Dagger, you
these
cannot eat books. Sorry, that is villain behavior, and we will not allow it.
now he's eating DVDs. Hold on a second.
Maybe if he had a cookie, he would not
poor,
behave like this.
poor Dagger is getting
No, he's getting kicked
dinoed.
out of the office.
He's getting
If you
dinoed
can't
and
behave, you
put
don't
out.
get to attend the podcast.
He did so well. He was sleeping for about an hour and a half, and then
He tried. He tried really hard.
He did well.
We're
He's good.
really proud of him. He
He's a
is
good boy.
just a baby. He's
he's
only
just
one. He's just a baby. Give him a
Yeah,
cookie. He'll
he
be
is.
fine.
He'll get a cookie later. We won't give it to Dukat though.
No, he gets 0 cookies. He does nothing good. He is a terrible, terrible little alien the whole time.
But I have to say, I think of villains, one of the most well-rounded, well-written villains I've ever seen in film or TV.
Yes.
Well, because he's based on
fantastic.
these horrible real life figures like
True.
mustache guy, like
Yeah.
I'm not on TikTok. I can say like Hitler.
I love
It's
how like we accidentally talk like we're on TikTok in real life.
actually I am live. Oops. Oh well. Haha. I'm gonna get a evaluation for that one. But
It's fine. It's fine.
okay.
Moving. He is definitely a narcissist. He is definitely very selfish in all of his actions. And I
Yeah.
Which is
know,
exactly why the paw wraiths chose him.
yeah,
Right.
no,
That's
he's
everything they
perfect.
represent.
He's perfect for them. He's amazing for them.
Moving on.
I love Villanelle from Killing Eve. I know you have not seen this yet, Marty, and you should add
Putting it
it
on the
to
list.
your winter binge list. I
It's an
call it
amazing show.
the lesbian murder show. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. She is very complex. She is fascinating. But everyone around her openly acknowledges that she is a narcissist. She is a psychopath. Like,
She is without a doubt a crazy, horrible individual.
and I love her. I love and adore her.
I
But
feel
she
like
is.
we could dig into this a little bit, but we will.
I don't want to do too many spoilers for Marty, because
Sorry,
there are
guys.
some things that pop
Oh
up in
no.
the show that will be more fun without spoilers. But speaking of her as just a character, she does go through some soul searching, where she's like, I don't have to be evil. I could choose to not be evil. And she does actively try. And there are several instances where she's like actively trying to be a good person. And then it's just like,
Nah,
this is exhausting. This
too much
is
effort.
too much. This is just a absolute constant exhausting act that I have to put on. None of this is natural. I cannot keep faking it. It is very clear that while she is being quote unquote good, that it is completely out of her wheelhouse. It is not how she would ever act naturally. And she does try really, really hard. And she gets exhausted and she's just like, nope, I give up. That's too much. And I think that's fascinating. I do think that's fascinating. She's like, just for funsies. Let's see if I can be good. Nope, I
I
can't.
mean,
I'm just a bad person. And then after that, she's just very much like, she definitely leans into it, I think, a little bit more. Like she is herself in the beginning of the show, and she is a psychopath. But in the end of the show, she is, I am a psychopath. I know I'm a psychopath, and I'm totally okay with that. Beautiful character development for a villain, not for like a nice hero.
yeah, yeah.
For a villain, it's beautiful, and I love it. But yeah, she is very evil and fantastic. But it is very selfish and narcissistic the entire show.
What I love about it is the show is kind of over the top, and
It
it's
is over the top.
just so perfect for it. I have not rewatched it as much as you have, obviously.
It is a comfort show for me, and that should say things that I
It
probably
says
don't
that
need everyone to know.
it says that you think you're a villain,
I
and
mean, my comfort show is also about a villain that's on this list later, so don't feel bad.
I also like falling asleep to Jurassic Park, so
also the dinosaurs are not the villains. So
no, definitely not.
Mm-mm.
They're not on this list. You obviously. Moving on from her, you can bring up Darth Vader.
Make us away.
I understand
look,
that a lot of people would like to try and defend him.
look, he does absolutely vile, evil things,
Okay.
and so I'm not saying that he
What is
redeems
the good
himself.
what is the good thing that he does?
Please try to convince me that Darth Vader is not a villain, because
Like, what is the good thing
convince
that he does?
Look, he is a person who falls into evil. He was not born evil, is all I'm saying, right?
I didn't
This
say
is
he
why
was
he's
born
lost.
evil. I don't think anybody is born evil.
I mean, I think he truly starts down the path in life of trying to do what's best for his mom, who's enslaved, right? He wants.
Narcissists care about their mothers too.
I
He's a
don't think he's a
narcissist.
narcissist.
like Norman Bates.
Yeah.
Look, I don't. Look, he murders the children in the Jedi Temple. Absolutely horrible, irredeemable, right?
Okay, can we the sand people. You can say that the emperor made him go kill the younglings. You can say Order 66 was out of his control.
Right.
He killed the sand people.
Right. He murdered the Sand People. Look, and this is because he is a product of two opposing evil organizations who never set him up for success. Okay. The Sith definitely had a plan for him to be ultimate evil, right? And we know this. And we know the Emperor manipulates him away from the Jedi. But the Jedi take this poor, enslaved boy and they turn him into a child soldier who is supposed to reject his feelings to the point where he has to hide his love for somebody. And they train him to use his latent abilities and become more powerful. Like, You give a broken person
A cookie.
these amazing, like, you train him to be the ultimate soldier. What did you say?
So
It's a
I
toxic
just
environment
interjected a
he's
cookie.
raised in. He
Yeah.
doesn't get a cookie,
okay,
but
so just for a little mind exercise, had he not been taken by the Jedi and he had stayed, do you think he would have grown up to be a good person?
I think there's a possibility that he would have been a better person. Yes.
You don't think that he would have gone up, like grown up to be a crime lord?
I don't think so. I don't see it. I think
Do you think he would have
had
still killed the Sand People?
no, I don't think so. Because one, he wouldn't have had the ability to do so, and two, he wouldn't have spent his entire life rejecting emotions
I mean,
and
he
feeling
always
ashamed
had
by
the
them.
ability to do so. He was always using the Force.
Yeah, but we also know
He
that
was
the
pod
force is not
racing.
as strong, but those are latent abilities. They weren't developed. And force users, if they are not actively developing their power, they lose a lot of their ability, right? So, yeah, he could race a pod, but he couldn't force
He had
choke
too many
anybody.
midichlorians to lose his abilities.
Yeah, I don't think with
I
that
am
midichlorian count, he was gonna, like, not.
oh,
Look,
I'm
here's my problem.
sorry, I'm
Here's my
sorry.
problem with Anakin Skywalker. Here's my problem with Anakin Skywalker. He was born into a tragic set of circumstances.
right.
Should the Jedi have taken him from his mother? Probably not. I agree with that. That was probably a bad decision. That being said, it did happen. He agreed to go.
He was 8.
At any point in his
Mother
yeah, but
said
at
go.
some point
An
in his
adult
life,
said
at some point in,
go.
at some point in his life, he could have made the conscious decision to stop what he was doing. I don't, because obviously he does. He does at the very end. At the very
No,
end,
he
he
does
said,
not.
well, he helps Luke, right? At the
Okay,
end
so
there.
yeah, let's pull this up. Paul's comment. He was redeemed only by the help of his son. No, absolutely not. If you know anything about a narcissist and how they treat their children, that child is an extension of himself.
I
That
just feel
was
like
not out of love. You cannot convince me that a narcissist is doing that out of love, and he is a classic narcissist.
I
That
just feel
is
like
his
at some
child,
point,
that is his extension of himself, and I've seen narcissists do the wildest things for their children. Like,
I feel at some point you have to take responsibility for your actions. And I feel like Anakin decides he doesn't want to take responsibility for his actions. And there are many opportunities that he has before he is fully committed to the dark side to take responsibility for the actions and stop himself and say, you know what? I'm not going to go down this path.
yes.
You could say the Emperor manipulated him. Yes, the Emperor does manipulate him. He also has Obi-Wan. He has good influences. He has Padme. He doesn't listen to
At all.
Look, Padme's
So,
the only good influence he has. I am
Well,
going to sit there and say the Jedi are villainous too.
okay, fine.
okay,
The
well,
Jedi
so
are
if he loves
villains,
her,
but he could
then he
leave
should
the
have listened to her.
Jedi just like Ahsoka leaves the Jedi.
Yeah.
Ahsoka sees their flaws, and Ahsoka leaves, and he chooses not to leave.
And this is
He
why
is
I'm
given
not
numerous opportunities to leave.
I'm not saying
He
he's not a
makes
villain.
active choices
I'm
to
not saying
do
he's not a
villainy
villain.
things.
Like Ahsoka is a perfect example of the hero in this because Ahsoka absolutely sees that the Jedi are part of the problem and leaves, right? I think she is the ultimate hero in that situation. I think he is definitely a very flawed, broken person. And he started off a very flawed and broken person, and people just wanted to use him as a tool. And so I don't think he ever had the opportunity to actually grow up and realize he had the ability to say no. Is all I'm saying.
See, I
Because
think that he still would have killed the Sand People
I
or
think
tried to kill them. He might not have survived, but I think he would have tried to still do it because I think even when he was younger, he was kind of entitled. He thought he was better than everybody. And I
was
think he
8.
still would have been driven to he still would have been driven as a teenager, whatever age he was when he kills the Sand People. I think he still would have been driven to kill them, even if he hadn't trained with the Jedi, even if he'd stayed at home.
I feel like if his mother had raised him, she would have taught him better. Like there's everything.
I feel at 8 years old, you're already fully developed on that sense. I feel like your mom has already done the best she could at 8. That's my thought.
There is so much of your brain and your morality that is pretty firm before 8, and you can grow and you can change, and your brain does continue into probably about 25 is the average our brain stops, but yeah, 8.
About
now, if you want to say, is Anakin more redeemable than Kylo Ren? Then I'm going to give you the benefit of that. Yes. I would say that Kylo Ren was straight off villain from the start, and there was no hope there whatsoever.
Kylo Ren.
I mean, to be fair, if my uncle snuck into my room at night and tried to kill me, I'd probably go a little evil too.
But the Sand People, I mean, okay, but the Sand People killed Anakin's mother.
Okay,
Look,
the Sand People killed Anakin's mother,
but the younglings didn't kill
an
anybody.
Entire village.
The younglings didn't kill anybody.
No, they didn't. I'm just saying that I feel like
there were so many points when maybe at some point, if the Jedi had done things differently, he could have turned out better. But there are more points where if Anakin himself had made a different choice, like you can't just say, "Oh, this environment forced me to be a bad guy." At some point, there is some personal accountability.
There is,
and if being raised by his mother would have made him a better person, then he would have had 8 years of memories to look back on and being like, maybe my mom would disapprove of this. I mean, you can have a psychopath who decides that they want to be a good person, and they say, I understand that I don't have morality, but I'm going to pick this other person who I know this other person has a moral compass. And before I do anything, I'm going to be like, would they do this? Would they not do this? Like, psychopaths can choose to be a good person, but he did not. Like,
I do like this comment here, and I think I'll let Joseph go off this comment. And if you're not already following Darren, you should absolutely follow him. Fantastic artist on Instagram.
I love this comment.
Yes. So the comment is basically that the Jedi didn't do anything to help Anakin. They took him on and didn't do anything.
Anakin also didn't ask for help. I'm saying the Jedi are flawed. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong.
Never helped.
He did not ask for help.
Go on, Joseph. Go.
Again,
he said, I want more power. Why won't you give me more power?
All I'm saying is at 8 years old, they had a responsibility to raise him in a loving and nurturing environment, and instead they turned him into a child soldier. Yes, that has an impact. Could he have chosen better? Of course, because we see other Jedi choose better, like Obi-Wan, to some extent. But also we see the Jedi turn their backs on enslaved people on Tatooine because it's not in their jurisdiction. Look, they're just interested in maintaining their power, right? So he is raised by a group of people who are no less noble than the Sith in many ways. All I'm saying.
So okay, just a general question out there. Do you think, because this came up in the comments, do you think that Anakin is redeemed?
No,
like not because the movies show that he is, right? Because they have him as a Force ghost. So the movies force his redemption. But do you believe he was actually redeemed in what he did?
I don't think so, because you don't kill a village and you don't slaughter children and then you get magical like redemption, right? It really, I have a problem with that, and I have a problem with the way Lucas portrays that because it's like, oh, I do one good thing before I die, and that's okay. Everything else I did is just forgiven. I don't believe in that, right? Like I don't
He
think
gets no
it's
cookie.
that easy.
I mean, he's with Kai Winn, right? No, I'm just kidding.
He gets
I
no
feel
cookie.
like you have to have true remorse, and you have to have some action behind that true remorse. Is it possible he had true remorse? It's possible that what he did at the end is true remorse, but to Van's point, begrudgingly, I feel like it really was not true remorse. It was like Luke's an extension of him, and he did what he did because, like, this is him getting back at the Emperor for daring to harm him and being part of his downfall. Like that is not true remorse, right? So I don't like that aspect of how Luke is portrayed, Anakin at the end.
Not
It
redeemed.
just feels cheap to me, right? But I do feel like
It just
there
doesn't
was
feel nuanced enough. I feel like the
no.
Force is more nuanced, especially if we look at it from this perspective of the Jedi also potentially being villains in their own right. Then there's definitely more subtlety than good and bad.
Yeah.
Like good and evil.
But I think the whole point of the trilogy, right, if you take out the forced redemption of Anakin, is that we see that balance in the Force doesn't mean the Jedi win because they had power for quite a while and there was no balance, right? Balance is balance
Mhm.
within the individual. And what happens is you have like people who are just pursuing ultimate darkness and ultimate light. And that's not balance because you do more harm because people are complex and that's not how people work. Sorry. Just
Okay.
No, I mean,
We're gonna
I feel
do
like
a
if you
Star
only watch
Wars
episodes
episode.
4, 5, and yeah, I was gonna say I feel like if you only watch episodes 4, 5, and 6, then the redemption makes sense. But once you add in the prequel trilogy, then for me the redemption loses. The Force Ghosts that loses all of its strength at that point.
yeah,
Because then we know too much. We know too much.
I agree. Okay. Moving
All
on.
right. We
Moving
are
on.
5 sections into our 9 sections of villains, and it is 7 till 10.
So we might have to choose a section.
I'm
and
saying,
maybe
do we
save
want
the
to
rest.
choose one more section?
What
Choose
section
one
do
more
we-
section. Which one do we want
I
to do?
want to talk about both AI and the psychotic ones, but I think that we could do a whole episode on the AI and human-made villains, and I think
Yeah.
that one would be really fun.
You
So
wanna
I
do
would like to
psychotic?
Let's do that.
talk about the psychotic.
Okay, so
Good, because
They
that's
are
my comfort one in there.
fun. They are fun. Okay.
Psychotic.
Yeah, the psychotic. These are definitely mentally deranged individuals.
And one of them was already brought up in the comments earlier. So
Yes.
this one,
Yes.
the Master.
The Master. Now, I have not consumed all of Doctor Who, so some of these masters, some of these iterations, I am not as familiar with. I am definitely more familiar with a lot of the newer masters. But I adore this character. And we do get the backstory that this character is psychotic and that this character was driven insane. And fascinating, like fascinating. He spends so much time being obnoxious to the doctor with no more purpose behind being obnoxious than to just annoy the doctor. Yes, he has his plans. Yes, he has his schemes. While he's Missy, she fantastic. I adored that version of the Master. Uh, absolutely always has plots and plans and wants to take over, but there is definitely an element of fun, and I would just like to play with the doctor. Like this is a game.
In many ways, I feel like the Master is like the Doctor's like biggest nemesis. I mean, more so than the Daleks or the Cybermen. I mean, because the Master is got this unpredictable through line,
Yes.
and more unpredictable than the Doctor, who is already unpredictable, and also plays that foil. The
Yes.
Doctor, is not but there are moments where we almost have to question whether we're on the Master's side. So I think the Master is a great villain in that sense. The Master is the villain, but at the same time, you're kind of like you're sucked into the charm and the personality.
Sometimes I'm pretty sure that the villain really is the Time Lords. Pretty sure they are the villains in all of this. And they did create this villain. They did.
True.
Well, throughout the 80s, the Master and the Time Lords in particular, kind of penalized the Doctor for what he does in saving others, and violating their rules of conduct, right? And so they, in my opinion, are very Jedi-like, right? They claim to be this altruistic society of people, but they are only interested in maintaining their own power. They put their children through some horrible things, staring into the time vortex, right, which can turn you insane, which is what happened with the Master, and they know this. So as you delve deeper into the story, yeah, he's psychotic, or she. They are psychotic. But also partly because of the purposes of the Time Lords. So, like, I find that I do enjoy watching the Master whenever they are on Doctor Who, but I do not think that they're completely capable of being anything that they are. Like, I don't think they can choose to be better if they wanted to.
I definitely think they
like
are
that.
a villain, and I do think that they choose to be better as much as they possibly can, and that you see them repeatedly not actually hurt, like not actually kill the Doctor, and sometimes they get really really close. But there is definitely the smallest amount of love for the Doctor. And I personally really enjoy their relationship, and any scene that they have together is always fantastic.
Kind of going off of that, I feel like if the Doctor were to ever die, or the Master were to ever accidentally succeed in killing the Doctor, I feel like the Master would lose that last tether that they have to their sense of reality,
Yes.
or to any goodness that they might have in them. So,
which is
yeah,
it's actually kind of interesting because I feel the same way about one of the other villains we're about to talk about.
Yes.
Dun
Yes.
dun dun.
Speaking of, we can move on. Yeah,
Joker.
the Joker. Yeah, without Batman, I think he would lose a little bit of a tether to, well, the smallest tether that he still has
See,
to
I have
reality.
I have less sympathy for the Joker than I do for the Master. To me, the Joker is bad, is an evil character. You know, this is a villain to me. And I know that there have been different iterations of the character, but to me, this is a villain who's never going to be redeemed in my eyes. It can't be redeemed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no redemption for the Joker. I think he depends heavily upon Batman to be his foil, because Batman is like this goal. Like, I have to be better than Batman.
Yeah.
And if Batman wasn't there, he would lose that like ability to push himself to be worse, which is ironic, right? So like Batman,
is the reason he's so bad.
Yeah, is why he's so bad. Like, he'd always be a villain, but he wouldn't be like this criminal mastermind of a villain. He'd just be like some low-key street like criminal who like murdered some poor family or something, and would be in jail. But like Batman is this like ultimate goal for him.
Yeah.
So I think the Joker is just this perfect example of criminally insane in every sense of the word.
He is.
Yeah.
He is criminally insane and not redeemable, and should not be looked up to as someone to emulate. Also, him and Harley. This is not relationship goals. Anyone
No.
listening, this is not goals.
No,
Okay?
their relationship is one of the
So
most
toxic.
messed up, toxic relationships ever.
Oh.
And one of the reasons why I can never see the Joker as anything but the villain. But I do think it would be interesting to just side by side sometime look at the Joker and Batman as both villains, but villains of a different type. Because I think that's, you know, it would be a totally different situation if it were like the Joker versus Superman, right?
Yeah.
Definitely, like Joseph said, I feel like Batman definitely fuels the Joker being a villain.
I think one of my favorite depictions of the Joker, and everyone can laugh at me, that's fine. Lego Batman is my favorite Batman movie. And the Joker in it, he is perfect. He is absolutely psychotic. He is unhinged, but he is very open and upfront about the fact that it is all about him and Batman. For the Joker, that's what it is about. And
Absolutely.
it beautifully done movie. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's hilarious and adorable and a kids movie, but it is a beautiful depiction of both Batman and the Joker. And I love that he is so upfront about it. Like it's you and me, Batman. Like, who would you be without me?
I love the Lego movie version, but my favorite version of the Joker and Batman will always be from the animated series. It'll always be Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill. Like they
fantastic.
They both played that character through voice acting for such a significant portion of my life, right? Like Kevin Conroy just passed away, right?
Yeah.
So I remember watching this, like, I think late 80s, 90s on into well into my adulthood, right? They were still making like Justice League and stuff. So it's just iconic. And the way Mark Hamill portrays the Joker is perfection to me.
It's perfection. Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Just beautiful. And honestly, that is the version of Batman that I like the most because it is not, even though I still think he's villainous in many ways, he has this like very strict policy on no killing and sticks to it as opposed to some of the other forms of media we've seen. Anyway, but the Joker gets no cookies ever. He doesn't even get offered. He doesn't even get to ask for a cookie. Like the minute he thinks he wants a cookie, he gets shocked because that's just the Joker. And the thing is, with the Joker, he would just keep on asking for cookies because that's how insane he is. So
he would ask for a cookie, but he does not get one. Our third and final is Hannibal Lecter, and I adore him.
This is my comfort show. This is my comfort show.
Oh my god!
You know what? I think that it says a lot about us that I have a lesbian murder show and you have a gay murder show as our comfort shows.
To me, this. But you know, the writing that I love Hannibal Lecter in all forms. I mean, I've read all the novels. I love the older films. I love this series. This series in particular, I feel really just brings the character to a different level. And to me, this is writer goals. Like what they pull off with that show is like writer goals. Like I think every crime thriller writer wants to figure out how they can bring that relationship into their own novels. Fantastic how they did it.
I love him.
But yeah, I mean, a character that is psychotic, but is cognizant of the fact that they are, that knows that they are, and
you what?
I've never seen this show.
Okay,
I'll send it to you.
Marty is gonna watch Killing Eve, and you are gonna watch Hannibal Lecter.
I will say, as a caveat, I find the third season of Hannibal the most difficult to watch. It's the Gillian Anderson season. To me, that is the hardest one to watch. First season is perfection. Absolute
I will
perfection.
watch anything of Gillian Anderson in it.
I mean, she is
Valid.
amazing.
Valid.
She's amazing in it. She's fantastic, but it is psychologically and emotionally the hardest season
I can understand.
of any show I think I have ever watched.
So
Okay, so my comfort show is Deep Space Nine.
I mean, see that I
And-
love Deep Space.
okay, but you have more than one comfort show, right? Like I have a whole
Yeah,
list of
obviously.
comfort shows.
Because I need comfort for different things.
Yeah, so it depends on what comfort I am seeking. Now, if my mental health is really suffering, then it's going to be Killing Eve, which is a newer one. This replaced Criminal Minds for me. It was Criminal Minds, and this is actually Killing Eve replaced Criminal Minds. But yeah,
for me, it was Hannibal replaced Battlestar Galactica.
that's fair. I see the connection. Yeah. I definitely rewatch Battlestar when I'm having the same.
See, Deep Space Nine is
no, this makes sense.
show that I enjoy watching, but I can't be too down. If I'm too down,
yeah,
it ruins Deep Space Nine for me. But if I'm already that down, like Hannibal's not going to make it any worse. Because Hannibal is way worse.
So I
It's
will
way worse.
fully admit that I would just watch Investigation Discovery and all of their serial killer shows. So I'm not saying I'm any better than y'all, but I'm like actually watching shows about actual serial killers.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'm ranking them in any way.
So Silence of the Lambs, I definitely had it on VHS as a young adult and watched it to fall asleep quite a bit, which is definitely a very great bedtime story.
You know, I love the character of Hannibal Lecter because I feel like it's equal parts this charm. We fall in love with his intellectualism. You know, he knows that he's wrong. He knows what he does is wrong. But he and I can't even say that he's manipulated himself into believing it's right because he hasn't. Like he completely understands that he has a psychosis. He's just making it work for him.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's able to pull people in, despite that, you know, his relationship with Clarice, his relationship with Will. I mean, it's he's such a dynamic villain.
I love and adore him.
So this is an interesting question because if I'm saying that the question is, do you consider Gul Dukat to be more of a villain, psychotic villain? And if I'm saying that Hannibal is psychotic, but we know he's psychotic because he's diagnosed.
Yeah.
Right. Like Gul Dukat, I
don't think he's psychotic.
I don't think he's psychotic. I think he's power hungry, narcissist.
Yes.
Villain. I don't think he's psychotic. I think he knows. He's not. He knows what he's doing. I mean, Hannibal knows what he's doing too, but most psychotic villains don't, I think, necessarily have a full grasp of what they are. But because he's a psychiatrist, he does. I think Gul Dukat's just bad guy. He's just a bad guy.
He's a narcissist. But Gul Dukat, not psychotic. Hannibal, definitely psychotic. And I do love that he is self-aware and he's like, I know I'm insane. I know I'm a bad guy and I like it.
The thing is the people around him, they know it too, and they also like it. It's a really interesting. It's a really interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
Hannibal has
incongruent.
Charisma.
He does. And I'm not going to say that TV show has inspired the look of the kitchen renovation that I'm currently doing at my house. But if I start cosplaying as Hannibal Lecter next year, you know why. It's because I redid my kitchen.
I support you.
I support your decisions. Okay.
I guess I'll be watching Hannibal tonight or Killing Eve.
Yeah. I think if you love the Hannibal show, that you will love Vilanelle and Killing Eve. There are a lot of parallels, I think, between the two shows. I think definitely different characters. definitely different characters. But I think you will enjoy it. It's really, really good.
It's really good.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Are we done?
Anything?
Is this it?
Villains. I
Yeah,
love
we
the
did
villains.
not cover all of
I
our
think we're good.
villains. We could be sitting here all day talking about villains. That would be a very
We'll
easy
save
thing
some
to
for
do.
other episodes.
Yes. We will
Cool.
come back and talk more villain later.
Well, in which case, this concludes episode 8, Bad Guy. So glad you were able to tag along with us. If you're not already following us, give us a like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, please share our podcast with your friends. I believe our next episode is 80s horror movies. Is that correct?
I think that's what we
That's the
discussed.
plan.
Yes.
Yes.
80s
Next episode
horror.
is 80s horror. Thank
Right
you.
in time for Halloween.
Get your spooky on. Get your spooky on.
Here we go.
Going out to explore. Tune in comes to another frackin' podcast. Time travel, wormholes, and more. Chevron's locked on another frackin' podcast. Debating all the lore. We get signal of another frackin' podcast. Nerdy topics galore. Systems go for another frackin' podcast.